heavens, it does. Now, you want to talk AFL, the Tas AFL team in particular?
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you compare South Australia in 1997 with Tasmania today. So in 97, South Australia had 2 teams and a population of 1.1 million. Today, Tasmania has a population of 541,000. So if you do the math, it's about the same per team. Plus, in 97 in South Australia, there was a rugby league team, 2 National Soccer League teams, and an NBL team. So 1.1 million people in 97 in South Australia supported 6 teams. And that's also with no taxpayers' money. The Adelaide Crows and Adelaide Power got no guarantees from government, not a cent from the government, no money for the stadiums, nothing. So it just seems illogical that Tasmania with 541,000 people can't support a team, and South Australia could support 6.
Peter Gutwin has just sent through. Do you mind if I read it, Glenn?
Yes, please.
He says, I'm very pleased to announce that after further discussions with the AFL and Gil McLaughlin over the past week, we've now reached an agreement on the time frame for a decision on a Tasmanian AFL licence. The decision on a Tasmanian AFL licence will be made once and for all in 2022, in line with the finalisation of the funding model for the AFL industry for the 23 and 24 seasons. The AFL and the state government will work through the matters raised in the Carter report ahead of a final position being put to club presidents for a decision on a Tasmanian AFL team. The Premier goes on to say, I want to thank Gil for the time he has spent in discussion with me over the past week to come to this agreement, which we both support. A historic decision will be made as early as possible next year on whether Tasmania will have its own team, which now paves the way for us to conclude negotiations for the one-year rollover with both Hawthorn and the Kangaroos for next season. This is a win-win. Tassie footy fans get yet another season of top-class footy played in Tasmania, and we will finally have a decision on our own Tassie team. From the Premier, Peter Gutwin, today.
I still think it's too slow. The Adelaide Crows were set up in 5 months.
And well, so you work in football.
But if you look at how quickly the South Australian team was, both South Australian teams were set up, they were both set up in under a year. The Dockers were the same. And this business about COVID, they've just given licences to 4 AFLW teams, but for the Tasmanian team, they can't because of COVID. It doesn't make any sense. And Colin Carter's been saying for 30 years they need to merge and relocate North Melbourne. He's literally been saying it for 30 years. I mean, you talk about a biased person to do a report. Colin, you couldn't find a more biased person in Australia to have done the report. He's been saying it for 30 years. He was saying 30 years ago that Melbourne needed 6 teams only. They needed to have all these mergers. South Australia could only support 1 team. Western Australia, 1 team. Everything he said has been wrong for 30 years, and yet he's the man giving all the opinions.
Well, it'd be interesting. I'm looking forward to the fact we'll finally know, yay or nay, early next year, according to the Premier. So at least that's a start. And, Glenn, it has been a long time waiting to see what's going to occur. We do have a lot of footy fans, as people are saying, no, we need to fix health first. Our Facebook certainly says that they'd rather have health fixed and that sort of thing way before footy. But I know we've got 2 big games coming up this weekend, and they'll be sellouts.
Oh, definitely. But I think the small games actually hurts the state football. Like, they played that Fremantle-St Kilda game on Sunday, and then the Melbourne media really got into how bad the crowd was. But if that game had been played on the Gold Coast or Sydney or Adelaide or Perth, they would have got less people. You have a look at some of the crowds for those neutral fixtures last year. They were worse than 3,000 people. Yeah, and no one in the Melbourne media criticised them. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I mean, the fact is also we put a cap on how many should go, and that cap is always achievable, and that's where we've done very well in that regard, and very fair for very obvious reasons. But you're spot on. I think they just criticised Tasmania for the sake we're over here and doing a bloody sight better than they are.
Yeah, I just think that someone like Colin Carter, he's got an invested interest. He's a Geelong man. So he's not thinking about what's best for Tasmanian football. It's about what's best for Geelong. And he thinks the best thing for Geelong is to get rid of North Melbourne, which is what he's been trying to do. He's been saying that, honestly, for 30 years. And my big concern is the president's voting. The presidents have a long history of voting for what's best for their team. So in 96, the presidents voted against the North Melbourne Fitzroy merger, because they thought North Melbourne and Fitzroy would be too strong. They instead sent Fitzroy to Brisbane. Clearly that was the wrong decision for the game. It was terrible for Fitzroy supporters, but it was all about what's best for us. So there's a long history of them not doing what's best. I don't know. Also, do you know the story of how West Coast got in the AFL?
West Coast Eagles tell me.
The presidents had a vote, and it looked like West Coast was going to lose the vote. And Fitzroy had been lobbying against the West Coast Eagles for months. Ross Oakley takes the Fitzroy president into a side room and says, "Look, if you change your vote, we will clear your debt, $660,000." And that's how West Coast got in. So there's this business of letting the presidents decide. They're going to do what's best for their club. They're not going to do what's best for the game.
Tell you what, as far as the Nusher goes, you know a lot about AFL, Glenn.
Yeah, I follow it. I watch a lot on YouTube, actually.
I thought you might. I know that our Minister, Michael Ferguson, in regard to the games coming up, he said the state's public health officer would actually decide probably tomorrow or Thursday whether the current crowd limit of 10,000 would be increased for the elimination final. So, yeah, I mean, the fact is, you are right. I've seen games where there's been absolutely no one in the crowd, GWS, etc. I mean, you're right, Gold Coast, we have had better crowds here and better supported.
Oh, definitely. There was crowds of 300 and 400 for AFL games on the Gold Coast last year, and no one in the Melbourne media said a word about it. They didn't even mention it. Because it's Tasmania, 3,000 people, there's your proof that they don't deserve a team. It's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, look, it is. I wait with bated breath now that we've got an answer to the question when we will have an answer early next year, which means also they'll move on with the Kangaroos and Hawthorn. But Glenn, good of you to call through and
held at Hope.
October 1, 1986. One of the most significant dates in football history. The VFL Commission is meeting with its clubs to vote on the expansion of the league to 14 teams, with licences to be offered to Western Australia and Queensland if the vote is carried. On the same agenda is Fitzroy's fight for survival, and the two are about to become inextricably linked.
Halfway through the meeting, it looked as though the Conservative forces were going to carry the day and prevent this new national competition from starting up. So Graham Samuel, who was one of the shrewdest commissioners of the VFL back then, called an adjournment. They got Leon Weigard, the chairman of Fitzroy, in a side room.
He was told that he was going to get $666,000, which would probably keep the Fitzroy Football Club alive if his vote was positive. And the board meeting was reconvened, and Leon voted in favour, and the vote was 175, and that's how the national competition came into play.
Straight away, the Conservatives in that room exploded, accusing the VFL of having bought the vote of Fitzroy. And in a way, they probably had, but there was really no choice for Fitzroy but to go down that path.